to lidded containers. Um, I'm going to be demonstrating how to make a lidded container using very limited materials. Uh, I have a little bit of an echo in here because of my mic. Give me a second. Let me turn it down. All right. That's a little better. It's okay. It is what it is. Okay, so we're going to pan on over here to my work table, and I have 5 pounds of clay. So I'm going to take my 5 pounds of clay and make sure that it's really well hydrated, it's squishy. I've already done that. I need to make sure it's wedged. So I'm just going to wedge it and get any and all air bubbles out. And also make sure the clay is the same level of wetness and dryness throughout. So that means it's homogeneous. All right. It takes a little bit of effort. Okay. Wedged. And I'm going to rock and roll it like a football just to make sure the ends are in. I don't want any of these chunky holes. So I'm going to rock it back and forth and get it all together. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and compact the ends. Okay. So that is prepared and ready to work. I'm going to create my template to make sure that I have the right size. So I'm going to need 2 pieces of paper. I'm going to set one aside. I'm going to take my piece of paper and fold it in half long ways or hot dog style and go ahead and create a crease. I'm going to fold it in half again, extra long ways, hot dog style, and open it back up. Okay, so now I have 4 equal segments. I'm going to remove one of these segments. Okay, I'm going to do the same thing to the next piece of paper. Fold it in half, hot dog style. Fold it in half again, hot dog style. Open it back up and remove a segment. Okay. This second piece of paper, I'm going to fold it in half, hamburger style or short ways. Okay. I'm going to fold it in half again, hamburger style or short ways. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to cut this in half. Discard one. Okay. I'm going to take my long piece and my little piece, and I'm going to make them come together. I'm going to put my long one on top of my little one, and the edge right here is going to line up with that crease. Okay. Line up with that crease. Try to make it as nice and neat as possible. And I'm going to tape it down. I like to make sure the tape goes over the edge like this. So that way when I flip it over, it attaches on the other side. Okay. Keep it flat and attach. Okay, so this is my rectangle template, and I'll be cutting a slab that's this size. So I'm going to set this aside, and now it's time to prepare my clay. So I'm going to start by smacking it into a long log, and I'm going to try to make it the length of this paper. I'm not rolling it. I'm smacking it lengthwise to stretch it out. And if you can squeeze, my hands aren't that big, so I'm going to keep smacking. Okay, so now it's not even close. Now I can start to kind of stretch and roll. I want it to get at least to this length. Unfortunately, the more you touch this, the more it dries out. So keep some water handy nearby if you need to keep adding moisture. Okay, now it's small enough that my little hands can fit around it. And I'm just going to gently squeeze as I rotate. Don't do one giant squeeze because it's going to ruin your clay and you have to start over. So gentle, gentle, gentle squeezes. Okay. I'm super close. I'm almost there. Always rotate it when you squeeze so that way it's even and nicely distributed. Okay. So I think that's close enough. All right. So now I'm going to start smacking it. Okay. So I'm going to just first start by using the palm of my hand, not my fingers, but the palm of my hand, and just flip it over. Flip it over. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it perpendicular-ish, diagonal, and I'm going to smack in a specific way. Instead of going straight up and down, I'm going to bring my hand up off to the side, and I'm going to make it land down on like a swipe. Flip it over. Rotate. We're going to keep doing this until we've reached our desired width, and then we'll check the thickness. I'm just squishing in the ends real quick because they're getting really long, and I want this to get wider and not longer. If you have a rolling pin, this is a really good opportunity to roll it. If you don't, you can smack it like I'm smacking it. I'm smacking the same idea. I'm starting up high out here, and then I'm bringing it down and close to my waist. So I'm pulling the clay this way, I'm hitting the clay that way. And notice how I broke my shield. And notice how I don't have really thin edges right here. I'm trying to keep those thick. Quick size check. Okay, I'm close. I'm almost there. Flip. 2 flat hands. When the slab gets this big, don't pick it up by your fingertips. Put one hand flat, put the other hand flat. Lift and lay it down. Check it. Close. I got to make sure the corners are all taken care of. We're very close. Almost there. Okay. So I'm well within the boundaries. Now I need to cut this rectangle out. I have a toothpick taped to the back of a pencil. You can use that. You could use a butter knife. You could use any tool that will do the job. Okay, so here's just a regular toothpick. And I'm just going to cut out this rectangle. Okay. I'm going to keep these 2 flat ends because those are going to be the top and the bottom. So don't squish those. We're going to keep those. Okay. These strips here we will rehydrate and use for more stuff. So if you're not working on your clay, you need to put it in plastic and cover it up. Okay, so I have a basic rectangle. I know that this size at least fits. And now I need to check to make sure it's the right thickness. So I want it to be as thick as a pencil. Right now it's still a little fat. So I'm going to keep smacking, but now I have less clay to work with, so it should be easier. Rotate. Okay. So yeah, that's pretty close. Okay. Always lift it up, make sure it's not stuck to the table. I'm going to put it back down. Now you're going to need a gift card, credit card, ID cards, anything like that to do this next part. I'm using my school ID card, and we're going to wipe the top of the slab, and this is called compression. And this is going to help prevent cracks and deformations. It's also going to really smooth the surface, and we really like having smooth surfaces on our ceramic work. Okay, I'm going to pick it up, 2 flat hands, lift, and I'm going to compress the other side. And notice how I don't just do one direction. I do one way, and then I'm doing a diagonal. Okay, you need to create variety in the way that you wipe it. Okay, and one more. Make sure you are able to lift it and it's not stuck on the table. I'm just going to set it back down. Get my template again. And now I have a really nice slab. Okay, and it's relatively even, so I can cut it nicely now. And look at all the extra clay that comes off that we're going to use. So we want to make sure the slab's the right thickness. Oh, didn't cut all the way through on that one. There we go. That's okay. The toothpick works amazingly well. I'm surprised. Okay. All right. And one more spot to cut. Okay. And if I make any mistakes, I'm going to just hang on to my template just in case I make a boo-boo later down the line. All of my scraps will be used for another part of this project. And so I'm just going to add some water to it and then wrap it up in plastic. Okay. Next step is to create bevel cuts. If you did the sculpture mug project, you know what that looks like. All right. And by this point, you should know how to bevel cut. I'm going to do this as a quick review. This should not be new. Okay, I'm going to come over here and gently remove that top angle. You know what? The ID card's better for this. Boom. Okay. And since I have this here ready to go, I'm just going to score it with my toothpick. Remember, this is creating your hashtags. And this is how we connect things, clay things to other things. Okay. And we'll flip it. And we'll do the same thing to the other side. Just removing that top edge corner, just like the sculpture mugs project. Okay. And again, your scraps, add water, wrap it in plastic, score it while you're here. Hashtags on the end. Okay. So here is a scored edge. Okay. And the slab thickness, careful, is about this thick, about as thick as a pencil. Okay, I'm standing it up on its edge, and I'm going to wrap it away from my body because I want to be able to make a circle with my thumbs. I'm going to put my hands behind the slab and gently pick it up and walk it towards each other, towards itself. Okay. All right. So I don't have any slip prepared, but water will work if your clay is this wet. I'm going to add a little bit of water to one side of the score work and a little bit of water to the other side. And I'm going to rescore, and that's going to create what I call auto slip. It's going to create slip for you. So if you don't have any slip prepared, this is one way to get around that. There are sometimes you have to have slip prepared because auto slip won't work. Okay, when you're connecting your edges, we never connect them exactly on each other because that seam will be weak. We put the bottom edge on the halfway point of either bevel cut. Okay. And that's going to create a slight thickness right here, and that's going to create a lot of support. So I just gently pressed on one edge. Keep your hands in a circle cylinder, and you're going to flip it over and do the same thing to the bottom. And then you want to blend that seam. And your goal is to make the seam disappear. Okay. Put your hand on the inside, and you're going to use your finger as support in the middle. So that way when you're pushing and blending, you're pushing up against your finger. Blend the inside too. I'm just taking my thumb and moving the clay across the surface. I'm going to go as far as I can, and then I'm going to flip it and make sure I treat the other side. Okay. Put your hand on the inside, take your card, and just scrape and wipe the seam. This will compress the seam and prevent crackage and warping and separation. Okay, so this is ready for a bottom and a top. You can also come in and clean out the seam on the inside if you can get your hand in there. You can also use like a pencil to help blend. Okay, use the tools that you have around you. Get creative with your tools. Okay. I'm going to set this aside and I'm going to pick up one of my slabs that I worked on earlier, and I need to flatten it out more about the thickness of the pencil, and it needs to be big enough for this cylinder to sit on. Okay, so that's how we know how big to make them. Okay, set that aside. That's about as thick as a pencil. And the cylinder, let's double check it, will fit on it easily. I'm going to do the other piece. About as thick as a pencil, and it'll fit. Okay, we're going to compress just like we did with the rectangle. Diagonal one way, diagonal the other way, flip, diagonal one way, diagonal the other way, set it aside. Get the first one back, diagonal one way, diagonal the other way, flip, diagonal one way, diagonal the other way, done. Okay. I'm going to set my cylinder on top of the slab. It doesn't matter which side is top or bottom right now. I'm going to trace the circle, the cylinder. Okay. And since none of these cylinders are perfectly circle, I'm going to create a registration mark, which is etching a V into the clay. Let me see if I can get a better angle on this. Okay, so there's a little V right here that I made. And then I'm going to just create a little V right here, and that's going to tell me where to attach it. I'm going to score. And remember, you need to make hashtags. So I went one direction, and now I'm going to go the opposite direction to make sure it's really well scratched up. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing to my cylinder. Where's my V? There's my V. So I'm just going to score the edge of my cylinder. Okay, and I'm gonna add slip. This is just water. That's the school bell, just ignore it. And score again. Okay, get your slab back. flip it over, and line up your V shapes. Hold it gently by the outside and gently wiggle and compress it down. Don't crunch it down, but gently wiggle and compress. I'm going to just seal that by running my finger along the edge, and it removed extra slip. And I'm going to cut this out. I'm not going to go straight down with my toothpick tool. I'm going to go at a slight angle. I'm going to come away from the cylinder base by like 1/8 of an inch, a very small amount. Okay. My toothpick is breaking. It doesn't like this. Okay. Rotate. Okay. And that's all the way cut out. I'm going to flip it upside down. I'm going to blend in this flangey area and make sure that the clay is really well blended and integrated. Okay, so you'll get some extra chunkies, maybe some areas you had too much clay there, you can just carve it off. And remember, all the little bits that fall off, we're going to keep them. Okay, so add water to your scraps, put it back in the pile and back in the plastic. We're going to attach this, and then you're going to do the same thing with the other slab and the other side. So by the end of this, you should have a top and a bottom on it. Clay shrinks though, so you're going to end up trapping air. So I want you to take your toothpick and just poke a hole, a little tiny hole in one of the bases. Okay. And that's going to let any of the air out. We can always fill that hole later, but if you don't let the air out, it's going to try to find a way out and it will break open your project. So you need to let it go. Let it go, let it out. It wants to be free. I have too much clay here. Okay. And then I'm going to just rib it with my card. Smooth it out, scrape it down. Now my bottom's starting to sink in, so you gotta be careful not to touch that. And we're gonna get it flipped over as soon as possible. Okay. Take some of that extra little clay off. And you know what? I have that piece of paper for my template. I'm going to use that to put my piece on. Flip it. Bam. Okay. And now I can rotate it on my table a little bit more nicely and wipe clean that surface. Okay. So before we progress into the next stage, which will be another video, I want you to get the bottom on, get the top on, and then we'll start working on cutting this bad boy open. Because there's going to be a way to cut it open and make it look really nice. Okay. And again, we always want to work as clean as possible. So we do all the cleaning as we go, and we don't save it for the end. Okay. Clean your tools, clean your work area, make sure you don't leave any clay dust out. Clay dust is bad for you to breathe, so you need to protect yourself and others around you. All right, I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for hanging with me this long.